Christmas Day arrived quietly, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Snow fell in slow, careful flakes, settling on rooftops, window ledges, and the bare branches of trees that lined. The morning light was pale and gentle, slipping through thin clouds and casting a soft glow over everything it touched. Inside a small upstairs room at the edge of town, Eliza stood by her window, her hands resting against the cold glass as she watched the snow descend. She was young, barely into her 20s, with a beauty that did not demand attention but earned it all the same. Her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and her eyes carried a quiet depth, as if they were always listening to thoughts left unspoken. That morning, her reflection in the glass looked calm, yet her heart was anything but. Christmas had always been her favorite day of the year. As a child, she believed completely in miracles, in Santa Claus, in wishes whispered after midnight, in the idea that love could fix anything broken. Even now, older and more aware of how fragile life could be, she still held on to that belief. Especially today. Behind her, the room was simple and warm. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with mismatched ornaments collected over the years, some handmade, some chipped, all full of memories. Tiny lights blinked softly, casting golden shadows across the walls. The scent of pine filled the air, mixed faintly with cinnamon from the bakery down the street. Eliza turned away from the window and let her gaze fall on the tree. One ornament caught her eye immediately, a small wooden heart hanging slightly crooked from a red string. Noah had made it for her 3 years ago, carving it by hand and sanding it smooth until it fit perfectly in her palm. He had given it to her with a shy smile, telling her it wasn't perfect, but it was made with care. That had always been Noah, quiet, thoughtful, steady. Her boyfriend, her love. They had met years ago on a snowy afternoon much like this one, when both had taken shelter in a cafe during a sudden winter storm. What began as a simple conversation had turned into hours of laughter, shared dreams, and the feeling that something important had quietly fallen into place. Over time, their lives intertwined naturally, without force. Love grew between them like something alive and patient. But life did not stay gentle forever. Opportunity came for Noah in the form of a job far away, one that promised stability, a future, and the chance to build something lasting. He had taken it with hope in his eyes and fear in his voice, promising that distance would not change what they had. Eliza had believed him. She had believed in them. At first, the letters were long and full of detail. Phone calls stretched late into the night. He told her about his days, she told him about the town, about small things she knew he'd miss. But slowly, life grew heavier. His work demanded more of him. Her days grew lonelier, messages shortened, silences stretched. Love remained, but it felt strained, like a thread pulled too tight. Eliza knelt beside the Christmas tree, folding her legs beneath her and resting her hands in her lap. The floor was cold through her thin sweater, but she barely noticed. Her eyes closed as memories flooded her mind, Noah's laughter, the way he listened when she spoke, the warmth of his hand in hers on winter nights. She swallowed, her throat tight. "I don't want much," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the hum of the lights. "I don't need gifts or surprises." She hesitated, then spoke again, more honestly this time. "Dear Santa, please don't let love fade. Please let him remember us. Let him come back to me if his heart still feels the same." The words trembled as they left her lips, fragile but sincere. She wasn't asking for magic, not really, just for love to survive the distance, the silence, the fear of being forgotten. Outside, church bells rang softly, marking the hour. Their sound drifted through the air, mingling with the hush of falling snow. Eliza stayed there for a long moment after her wish, eyes still closed, as if afraid that opening them too soon might break something delicate. Eventually, she rose and wrapped herself in her coat. The day would not wait for her sorrow. Christmas had work to be done. The streets were alive despite the cold. Children ran ahead of their parents, laughter echoing as they kicked through snowbanks. Storefronts glowed with warmth, windows filled with lights and decorations. The world looked hopeful, and Eliza wondered if that hope could somehow find its way into her chest. She made her way toward the old church near the center of town, where volunteers gathered every year to serve meals to anyone who needed them. It was something she had done since her teenage years, a quiet tradition that made Christmas feel meaningful. Giving, she believed, was a way of reminding the heart that it was still capable of love. Inside, the church was warm and bustling. The scent of soup and fresh bread filled the air. Eliza tied an apron around her waist and joined the others, offering smiles, pouring drinks, listening to stories. She laughed when appropriate, spoke gently to the elderly, and knelt to children's level when they spoke to her. Yet through it all, her thoughts wandered. Each time the door opened, she looked up instinctively, her heart lifting for a brief second before settling again. She told herself not to hope too much, but hope had never been something she could easily silence. As the afternoon wore on, the light outside dimmed, and the snow began to fall thicker. Eliza stepped away for a moment, standing near one of the tall windows and watching the world outside blur into white. She pressed her palm against the glass, warmth meeting cold. "Maybe love needs patience," she murmured to herself. "Maybe this is part of it." Still, the ache remained. When her shift ended, Eliza stepped back into the evening, the sky painted in soft shades of lavender and gold. The town felt quieter now, as if everyone had retreated indoors to celebrate. She pulled her coat tighter and began the slow walk home, her boots crunching against the snow-covered ground. Christmas lights flickered above the streets, and the bells rang once more, gentler this time. Eliza breathed deeply, letting the cold fill her lungs. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the doubt and longing, a small spark of belief remained. She had made her wish. And Christmas, she knew, had a way of listening. The afternoon slipped quietly toward evening, as if time itself had slowed in respect for Christmas. Eliza stepped out of the old church, the heavy wooden door closing behind her with a soft echo. Warmth lingered on her skin from the glowing hall inside, but the winter air quickly claimed her breath, cool and sharp. Snow had begun to fall again, thicker now, the flakes swirling and settling in gentle layers along the street. She paused on the steps, pulling her scarf closer around her neck. The town looked different at this hour, softer, calmer. Windows glowed with candlelight, and faint music drifted through the air, muffled by distance and snow. It was beautiful, and yet a quiet loneliness pressed against her chest. Eliza began walking slowly, her boots crunching against the frozen ground. Each step felt deliberate, as though she were moving through a dream. Her thoughts returned, again and again, to Noah. She wondered where he was at that exact moment. Was he warm? Was he alone? Did Christmas remind him of her the way it reminded her of him? She remembered the last conversation they'd shared, a hurried phone call days earlier, his voice tired, distracted. He had said he missed her, but the words had felt strained, as though pulled from somewhere deep and buried beneath exhaustion. After the call ended, Eliza had sat in silence for a long time, staring at her phone as if it might speak again on its own. Now, as she walked beneath strings of golden lights hung across the street, she felt that same quiet ache. Love did not disappear suddenly, it faded in small, painful moments like these, when absence grew louder than words. She passed the bakery, now closed, its windows fogged from the warmth that lingered inside. The scent of cinnamon and sugar still clung faintly to the air. Noah had once surprised her with pastries from that very place, claiming he had simply walked by, though she knew he'd gone out of his way. The memory made her smile despite herself. A gust of wind sent snowflakes dancing around her, and she tucked her hands into her coat pockets. The street ahead stretched long and nearly empty, the sounds of celebration retreating behind closed doors. Eliza slowed her pace, reluctant to return to her quiet room just yet. Silence felt heavier tonight. Her thoughts wandered back to her wish that morning. She wondered if it had been foolish to ask Santa for something so fragile and complicated. Love was not a toy or a ribbon-wrapped miracle. It was made of choices, timing, and courage. Still, something deep within her hoped, quietly, stubbornly, that her wish had not gone unheard. She reached the edge of the town square, where a large Christmas tree stood illuminated, its lights reflecting off the snow like scattered stars. Eliza stopped there, gazing at it, letting the beauty settle her restless heart. Children had decorated it earlier in the week, hanging handmade ornaments and paper chains. It was imperfect and lovely. She felt a strange hesitation, as if something were about to happen but she couldn't yet see what shape it would take. The air seemed charged, the world holding its breath again. Then she heard footsteps. At first, she thought it was just another passerby, but the sound lingered, slow, deliberate, unhurried. Her heart skipped, then scolded itself for reacting so easily. Still, she turned, her breath catching despite her efforts to remain calm. The street behind her was nearly empty, softened by falling snow. For a moment, she saw nothing out of the ordinary. Then, through the white haze, a familiar shape emerged at the far end of the road. Tall, still, waiting. Her heart began to pound, loud enough that she was sure the world could hear it. The figure stepped forward, closer now, and the streetlight revealed his face. Noah. For a heartbeat, Eliza couldn't move. The world narrowed to that single point, as if everything else, the lights, the snow, the sound, had faded away. Her breath caught painfully in her chest. She blinked once, twice, afraid her eyes were betraying her. But he didn't disappear. He stood there, snow gathering on his coat, his dark hair dusted white, his eyes fixed on her as if she were the only thing anchoring him to the ground. There was hesitation in his posture, uncertainty in the way he held himself, like someone afraid to step too far into a dream. Eliza, he said, his voice carrying softly through the cold air. Hearing her name from his lips shattered the last of her disbelief. Emotion rushed through her so quickly it left her dizzy. Relief, joy, fear, and longing tangled together until she wasn't sure which one hurt the most. Noah, she whispered, though she knew the answer. He took another step forward, then another, as if testing whether the moment would break. I didn't know if you'd be out, he said, his voice low and uneven. I hoped, but I didn't want to assume. She could hardly speak. Tears blurred her vision, and she laughed softly, the sound trembling. I was just walking, she said. I wasn't ready to go home yet. He nodded, as if that mattered deeply. I'm glad, he said. They stood a few feet apart now, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the familiar curve of his smile struggling to form. Snowflakes landed between them, melting as they touched the ground, as if even the snow didn't want to interrupt. I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me, Noah continued. I know I've been distant. I know I hurt you. Eliza shook her head slightly, though tears continued to fall. I didn't stop loving you, she said. I just didn't know where I stood anymore. He exhaled slowly, relief flickering across his face. I've been thinking about that every day, he admitted. About you. About us. A silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken truths, of things both had carried alone for far too long. The town bells rang again in the distance, softer now, as if marking something important. I came back today, Noah said quietly. Not just for Christmas, for you. Her breath trembled. Why now? Because I realized something, he said, stepping closer. All the things I was chasing, they don't mean anything if I lose you. Eliza's heart ached at the honesty in his voice. She wanted to run to him, to close the distance and prove that love could still bridge what time had tried to pull apart. But she stayed where she was, needing to hear more. I was scared, Noah continued. Scared that I wasn't enough. Scared that I'd fail you. But being away showed me that losing you would be the real failure. Snow fell harder now, swirling around them like a curtain closing in. Eliza felt warmth rise in her chest, fragile but real. She took a step toward him, then another. I wished for you this morning, she said softly. I asked Santa to protect our love. Noah smiled then, truly smiled, his eyes shining. Then maybe this is the answer. They stood beneath the falling snow, close enough now that she could feel his warmth, his presence steady and real. The world around them faded into quiet light and drifting white, and Eliza knew, whatever came next, this moment would stay with her forever. Christmas had not ended yet. And neither, it seemed, had love. Snow continued to fall around them, thick and unhurried, as if the night itself had decided to slow down and watch. Eliza felt the cold on her cheeks, but it no longer reached her heart. All she could feel was Noah standing there, close enough that she could sense his warmth through the winter air, close enough that the distance which had haunted her for months seemed suddenly unreal. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Words felt fragile, as though saying the wrong thing might shatter the quiet miracle unfolding between them. Noah was the first to break the silence. He lifted a hand slowly, hesitating just inches from her face, silently asking permission. When Eliza nodded, he brushed his thumb gently beneath her eye, wiping away a tear that had escaped without her noticing. I hated myself for making you cry, he said softly. Even when I wasn't there, I knew I was hurting you. Eliza swallowed, her voice trembling. I tried to be strong, she said. I told myself love meant patience. But some nights, it felt like waiting for something that might never come. Noah lowered his hand, guilt flickering across his face. I didn't realize how far I'd drifted until I felt you slipping away, he admitted. Every day without you felt heavier. Christmas just made it impossible to stay gone. The bells rang again, closer now, echoing gently through the streets. Eliza stepped forward, closing the last bit of space between them. When she rested her forehead against his chest, she felt his breath hitch, felt his arms wrap around her instinctively, as though his body remembered her before his mind could catch up. She fit there perfectly, just as she always had. For the first time in months, Eliza allowed herself to relax fully, her hands gripping the back of his coat as if anchoring herself to something solid. The familiar scent of him, cold air, soap, and something uniquely Noah, filled her senses. Tears slipped free again, but this time they were warm with relief. I missed you, she whispered into his chest. Noah tightened his hold. I missed you every second, he said. Even when I pretended I was fine. They stood that way for a long time, letting the world exist without them. Snow gathered on Noah's shoulders and melted in Eliza's hair. The cold crept closer, but neither seemed willing to move. Eventually, Noah pulled back just enough to look at her. Will you walk with me? He asked. I don't want this moment to end. Eliza smiled through tears and nodded. I don't either. They walked slowly down the street, hand in hand, their fingers fitting together naturally, like they had never been apart. The town was quiet now, most lights dimmed behind curtains, families settled into warmth and laughter. Above them, Christmas lights shimmered, reflecting in the snow like scattered stars. As they walked, Noah told her about the long nights away, the exhaustion, the pressure, the constant feeling that something essential was missing. He spoke honestly, without excuses, admitting the fear that had kept him distant. I thought if I succeeded first, everything else would fall into place, he said. But I learned that love isn't something you pause and return to later. It needs you present. Eliza listened quietly, squeezing his hand now and then. I didn't want perfection, she said. I just wanted you. He stopped walking then, turning to face her beneath the glowing street lamp. Snow swirled around them, catching the light. I'm here, he said firmly. And I don't want to leave again. Not without you. Her breath caught. Are you sure? She asked softly. Because I can't lose you twice. Noah cupped her face gently in both hands. I'm sure, he said. I choose you. Today and every day. Emotion overwhelmed her. Eliza leaned into his touch, her heart pounding. When he leaned down and kissed her, it was slow and careful, filled with all the words they hadn't been able to say before. The kiss tasted of snow and second chances. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling, eyes bright with unshed tears. They continued walking until they reached her building. The windows glowed softly, her small Christmas tree visible through the glass. Eliza hesitated at the door, suddenly shy. Would you like to come in? She asked. Noah smiled. I'd like that very much. Inside, warmth wrapped around them instantly. Eliza hung their coats while Noah looked around, taking in the familiar space he hadn't seen in months. His gaze fell on the Christmas tree, lingering on the ornaments. You kept it, he said quietly, nodding toward the wooden heart. Eliza followed his gaze. I couldn't take it down, she admitted. It felt like taking you down too. She knelt beneath the tree and picked up the small gift she hadn't opened earlier. The paper was plain, carefully wrapped. Noah watched her closely as she sat on the floor and slowly peeled it open. Inside was the wooden heart. At first, she didn't understand what was different. Then she noticed the fine golden line running through the center where a crack had once been. The break had been repaired, not hidden, made more beautiful by its healing. Her breath caught. Noah, I fixed it, he said softly. It broke a while back, and I kept it with me. I wanted to bring it home whole again. Tears spilled freely now. Eliza pressed the heart to her chest, overwhelmed by the symbolism. It's beautiful, she whispered. So are you, he said, kneeling beside her. And so is what we have, if you'll let it be. She looked up at him, eyes shining. I already wished for it, she said. This morning, I wished for you. Noah smiled, brushing her hair back. Then Santa must have been listening. They sat together on the floor, leaning against the couch, the tree lights blinking softly above them. Outside, snow continued to fall, quiet and endless. Eliza rested her head on Noah's shoulder, feeling peace settle into her bones. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't scare her. As midnight crept closer, Noah stood and offered her his hand. Come here, he said. He led her back to the window. The town lay hushed beneath its blanket of snow, the streetlights glowing like gentle guardians. Noah wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting lightly atop her head. I used to think Christmas was about finding your way forward, he said. Now I think it's about remembering where you belong. Eliza smiled, closing her eyes. Sometimes love just needs a little faith, she said. They stood there together, watching the snow, hearts steady and full. Christmas had given Eliza everything she had asked for, not wrapped in ribbon or delivered in sleigh bells, but carried home by love brave enough to return. And in that quiet, glowing room, with winter pressing softly against the glass, Eliza knew one thing with certainty. Some wishes don't fade into the sky. Some wishes walk back to you, knock on your door, and choose to stay.